First, I would say if you really do think this is something you want to do, go for it. This industry is amazing. The people in it are incredibly welcoming, supportive, and that's at all levels, whether it's producers, our suppliers that do corks, glass, what have you, the writers that do it, our consumers. It is just an amazing industry to be in. So if you think it's what you want to do, go for it. It's worth the effort. It's worth the hours that it's going to take to get there. But I would also say, and I didn't know to do this when I started, but I realized this is what I did, and I think it helped me. Stop looking at the glass ceiling. Stop acknowledging that it's there. Stop acknowledging that there's a brick wall facing you. Ignore all of those things.
Welcome to the Whiskey Lifestyles Women in Whiskey series. I am your host, Rashawn Hall. We're back with another great guest this week. Someone who, to say the least, has made history already. We'll talk a little bit about that, as well as current projects and her career trajectory. So without further ado, let's bring in Old Dominick's Master Distiller and SVP, Alex Castle. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. So thanks for doing this. We met a couple of months ago when Tennessee, I think, Tourism Board was in town, and they brought some whiskey folks up, and they brought some great food folks up. Had an amazing time. It was a pleasure meeting you and tasting Old Dominick for the first time. But before we talk about Old Dominick, I want to learn a little bit about you and kind of give our audience a little background of who you are. So the first thing that I read that I found super interesting when I was doing my research is that you knew in high school that you wanted to either be in spirits or beer. And I'm sure people ask you all this all the time because it was written about. How, and how did that come to be that was a thing that you said, okay, this is the direction my career is going in at that age?
Yeah, honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how it happened. Basically, I was, for a long time growing up, knew I would be a marine biologist. Absolutely knew it. And then I took biology in high school, and it was horrible. Absolutely hated it, and had a midlife crisis because suddenly I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And discovered chemistry, physics, the higher maths, calculus, and whatnot. And my mom said, okay, with those, you can do chemical engineering. And I said, wonderful. What do those people do? And hand to God, she said, you can make beer and be a brewmaster, or you can make bourbon and be a master distiller. And I said, let's do it. And so I was about 14, 15 when that happened. And I, to this day, don't know what it was about that I was so intrigued by, that resonated with me, but something did. And I set off on that path. And here I am, I guess, if I was 14, 15, 23 years later, and doing just that.
Okay. Wow. Well, I guess you should qualify. You're from Kentucky, which makes some sense that your mother was like distilleries. So it's not like you were,
it's a
sitting
little
in
more
Michigan
normal.
Or somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's a family business, so that makes sense. That's so interesting that like chemistry makes sense to you, but biology doesn't. For me, it was the opposite. Like in math, loved math, science in general, terrible at. So that's really cool. So then you set off on this path. You go to Kentucky. What as you progress and what was the appetite? How did the appetite grow for the space? Over that time, from that age to kind of going through school and then getting into the world and figuring out how you take that path.
Yeah, appetite definitely grew. In engineering, they encourage you to do co-ops or internships during your studies to get that real life application. And so ended up taking off what amounted to about a year and a half total to do a co-op, and ended up working for a company called Alltech, relatively unknown at the time. And the reason I joined them, because their main thing was animal nutrition supplements, animal feed.
Okay.
Definitely not something I'm interested in, but they had a brewery and it was really small. I was like, okay, sure, I'll go there. It's in Lexington, so I don't have to move. And I ended up in their engineering department, and the head of engineering was over top of the brewery. And so on Fridays, I got to go bottle beer. Sounds very thrilling. I loved every minute of it.
Hmm.
But what I didn't know when I took the co-op was that they actually were bringing two copper pot stills over from Scotland, and with plans to put them in the brewery. And they didn't have anyone to run those stills. And my boss was over top of that project as well. And as an intern or co-op, I was cheap labor. And my boss knew I was interested in it. And
Hmm.
so one day he asked me if I wanted to observe a distillation. And I said, let's do it. This sounds wonderful. Get out of the office.
Hmm.
And I get down to the distillery brewery, and he immediately says, I'm so sorry. I forgot to take the boys to the dentist. And I said, oh crap, now I have to go back to the office. And instead, he ran through the whole process in about 5 minutes, and he took off.
Okay.
He let me run the stills the first day completely unsupervised. But it was that day that I fell in love with distilling. I don't think I stopped smiling once that entire day. As terrified as I was that I would blow the
Hmm.
entire place up, I was in love with it, and that was the beginning of it all for me.
Okay. So that definitely serendipity about the pot stills, but also yeah, the fact that he's like, "You got it. You're good. I'll be back." Wow. Okay. But, yeah, different time, but that no,
Very
that's
different
amazing.
times. He trusted a
So
21-year
yeah,
old with that.
yeah, that's yeah, with like in imported Scottish pot, not something you built on your own or something local. But okay, so tell us a bit of what is from that point, like how now you were in love with distilling. What was the trajectory from there? What were your kind of next steps once you knew that was the role you wanted or
Yeah.
the
So
position you
from
wanted?
there, finished school.
Mm,
And in my senior year of college, I think I sent out about 75 resumes to
mm,
distilleries across the country. I heard back from two or three, all of them no's.
mm,
No one was hiring. Even Alltech, where I was at, they weren't looking to hire anyone. So I spent a year actually making laundry detergent in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It was a good learning experience. Definitely not what I wanted to do for a living. And actually, someone I worked with at Alltech reached out asking if I was still wanting to be in distilling because he had a buddy who was a headhunter and who
mm,
was trying to fill a position at Wild Turkey. And I said, absolutely, connect me, let's do this.
mm,
And so, fast forward, end up interviewing at Wild Turkey, getting on as a third shift supervisor at what was their new production facility. And I spent 4 years overseeing grains receiving and quality, mashing, fermentation, distillation, byproduct treatments, and just really learning the ropes of the industry on a very large scale
mm.
at that facility.
And interestingly, you worked with another former guest of our show at when you were during your time at Wild Turkey. Just so you want to tell everyone who that is and how you all like. I know we talked a little bit about this, if I recall, how you all know each other and what that was like.
If it's who I remember it is, I
Mm-hmm.
got to work with Shaylin
Mm-hmm.
of Blue Run now. Uh, I had started at Wild Turkey. I want to say she started about a year before I left, actually. And she was in product development, which was something I was very, very interested in at the time. And so I got to spend some time with her on the
Mm-hmm.
expert sensory panel. And then obviously we parted ways when I left, and then I got to see her move on to Blue Run Spirits and all the amazing things that she
Yeah.
is doing now.
Yeah, that's incredible that the two of you. I mean, obviously, you would think Wild Turkey is a great starting point for any distiller, but the fact that the two of you have excelled the way you have is really amazing. Kudos to both of you. So yeah, let's get back to so you were at Wild Turkey, you departed there. I believe you went to where? What was your next stop?
My
And what kind
next
of yeah.
my next stop from Wild Turkey was old
Mhm.
Dominick.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't looking to leave Wild Turkey. I
Mhm.
absolutely loved my job, loved the company. Campari was wonderful to work for. And one day I got a message on LinkedIn asking if I knew of anyone who might want to move to Memphis to help start up a distillery.
Mhm.
I took about 2 days to think about it and sent in my resume. And then, I don't know, 6, 7 months later, my husband and I were in Memphis.
Wow. So a Kentuckian going to make Tennessee whiskey. What first thoughts? What did your friends think, or did people take away your were there I don't know, protests? What was that? What was that like at the start?
Um, it was more so not so much moving to Tennessee. It was more the moving to Memphis part because
Okay.
everyone has their preconceived notions about Memphis, which I have to say are completely wrong. This city is amazing. But everyone was a little, you sure you want to move to Memphis? And we absolutely love it here. But yes, the idea of coming from the Kentucky bourbon world to the Tennessee whiskey world took some adjustment, took a lot of
Hmm.
adjustment. Family was sad to see us go, but excited for the opportunity. At the time, not a ton of craft distilleries starting up in Kentucky. And the
Hmm.
ones that were being started up by the people that wanted to run them. And so everyone kind of understood if I was to help start a distillery, I was most likely going to have to leave the state to do so. And at least I was driving distance from everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the story of Old Dominick and how the brand was revived is really interesting. I'm sure you tell it better than anyone. So please, to give tell our audience how Old Dominick came to be and then how it came to be resurrected.
Sure. So our company, Deacon Alley and Company, which is the parent of Old Dominick, dates back to 1866. We were founded by an Italian immigrant, Domenico Canali, who immigrated from Italy in 1859, came straight to Memphis because he already had family here, and started working for his uncle, who had a wholesale food distributorship. And he spent a couple years learning the ropes, and by 1866 felt he knew what he was doing and founded his own wholesale food and fruit distributorship called Deacon Alley and Company. And shortly thereafter, because business was doing so well, he decided he wanted to add whiskey to his portfolio. And so he started sourcing whiskey from Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, anywhere that had barrels for sale. Started buying those barrels, bring them to Memphis on rail car, and bottled them under the Old Dominick label, named it after himself, of course. And business was great. The whiskey was doing well. And then a little thing called Prohibition happened, and it happened in Tennessee a full decade earlier than the rest of the country. So that definitely put a damper on things. But in some ways, it was a blessing. Domenico actually didn't live to see the full country go into Prohibition. He passed away shortly before it started. But unfortunately for the brand, that meant our brand champion passed away. We no longer had the whiskey lover there advocating for us. So we get through Prohibition. Company is continuing on. It's thriving. It's doing food. It's doing fruit. No alcohol, of course. They start a beer distributorship or buy a beer distributorship. Is Budweiser.
Hmm.
Had that for, I think it was close to 80 years. Sold off food in 1999, sold off beer in 2010. And by that point, didn't really have a foothold in Memphis. The family office was here, but that was about it. Everything else was outside the city, even sometimes out of the state, or it was investments. And the current owner, Domenico's great great grandson, fifth generation owner, decided it was time to get the business back to Memphis, get it back to what it was when it was founded. And someone suggested he sell the Old Dominick whiskey brand. And that planted the seed for him as to what that future for the company looked like. And he said, nope, not selling it. I'm going to start it. And so in 2013, 2014, he decided it was time to bring that whiskey brand back, but in a much bigger way. Instead of sourcing whiskey like Domenico did, he wanted to start making it himself. He wanted it to be fully produced in Memphis. And so that's where I come in. They got to the point of building out the distillery in 2015, brought me on board, started producing whiskey tail end of 2016, and opened our doors in 2017.
What was it like being there from the inception and then having that first bottle, that first barrel done? You start to bottle it. What was that experience like? Something going from inception to where Old Dominick is today.
Yeah, so this project has been A very long road, lots of tears, not so much blood. We'll say it figuratively because that's what you do. Blood, sweat, and tears. And so, and we even, had to shut down because we ran out of warehouse space. So our release actually got delayed about a year. Pandemic didn't help. So we had all of these hurdles. And so to finally in fall of 2022, we were ready to finally bottle our first whiskey. And for me personally, it was the first whiskey I got to do start to finish because I wasn't even at Wild Turkey long enough to experience that. Um, it was a momentous thing for all of us because I still had people on my production team who were there with me on day one. Some were on my production team who actually were tour guides in the early days, so they'd been with us for a long time. So there were a lot of us who had been there just waiting for this moment, and it was thrilling. It was exhilarating. It was nerve wracking because the moment you put something out like that out in the world, you're opening yourself up to criticism. So you waited all these years, and what if you put it out and people hated it? So it was a mixed bag of emotions, but we were so freaking proud to finally reach the day that we had all been working towards.
And do you still? I'm assuming you guys all have those original one or two of those original bottles just stashed away for like.
I absolutely do. So we decided when it was time to start shipping product, the owners wanted all of the current employees at the time to get one bottle of our Tennessee 85 proof and one bottle of our batch one bottle and bond. Um, so every employee got one of each from that first bottling run. And mine are sitting on like my top shelf of the bar, never going to get touched.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in making, you've made whiskey in both Tennessee and Kentucky, and seeing those, is there? I know there's a difference, obviously, in flavor profile and in so many different things. But as a maker, is there really a difference? Like when you, as someone who makes the juice beyond kind of the rules and constraints.
For me, I went about Tennessee whiskey as trying to produce something for a bourbon drinker. So
Mm,
for me, I followed all the same protocols and rules and methods that I would do for a bourbon, just adding that one step of the Lincoln County process, which Memphis likes to do things differently, which I very much appreciate. So instead of going through 10 feet of charcoal, we go through about a foot of charcoal. So, really, for us, it's about maintaining the integrity of the grain flavor, the flavors developed during fermentation, and then, of course, everything that's developed in the aging process.
cool. And you mentioned Memphis, so where you guys are based. This is talk about first in history, as I mentioned in the intro. This is the first whiskey produced in Memphis, correct? What does
Yes.
that What does that mean for you? And then also conversely, in this, as the brand has evolved, what has that meant for the city of Memphis and how it's been received?
Yeah. So, for me, when I moved to Memphis, I didn't know what all we would achieve. I didn't realize that we would be the first distillery to distill, age, and bottle a Memphis produced whiskey in Memphis since Prohibition. Had no clue that's what we were signing up for, but when we found that out and realized that that was happening, we realized the magnitude of it. We realized how important it was, not just for us on personal levels, old Dominick on a business and brand level, but for the city that to be able to say we finally have our own whiskey, we have a Tennessee whiskey. We realized that was incredibly important for them to claim that and to finally have that to be proud of. So there was a lot of weight surrounding this release, knowing that we had all of these different important milestones that we were hitting for not only ourselves but for others. So that was incredibly important for us, and for Memphis to have yet another thing to be proud of. They have music, of course. They have an amazing history of music, and of course in civil rights movements and things like that. We have amazing history and all those things. Plus, we have current things to be very proud of. We have a beautiful zoo. We have amazing parks here. The food scene is taking off. So Memphis has a lot to be proud of, but to be able to add one more thing to it that is very relevant to today, and that is whiskey tourism, was awesome to be able to help get them on the map for that.
Right. And again, speaking of history, and you seem, I know you're very humble, but you are also the first woman master distiller in Tennessee, and I mean only a couple months after the first woman master distiller was named in Kentucky. Uh, Obviously, that's just talk about weight. That's also a weight to carry that mantle. What was that like? How did that tell me a little bit about how that happened? What did it feel like? Did Was there even a thought of, oh, the first, or was it just obviously you were doing your thing, making great whiskey, and
Wasn't even thinking about it. Was doing my thing. Because truthfully, I've gone about my career not thinking about being the first of anything, not even being a female in this industry. Because I've been fortunate at the start of my career for that to not be a big deal.
mm,
It wasn't much of a hindrance. I've learned over the years to appreciate all of that. So no, when I took the job, wasn't thinking about any of that. My concern was getting old Dominick production up and running, making good products, and all the other aspects of it. But I do fully appreciate what it was looking back, and I'm incredibly honored to have been able to break barriers, whether it's in Tennessee or anywhere else in the industry. But I guess it's just a thing I did,
mm.
and just continuing on from there.
Okay. And what advice, as there are obviously more and more women and more people of different backgrounds beyond the your stereotypical distiller of whiskey. What advice do you give when people, as you meet people, tastings, etc.? What advice do you typically give them if someone's interested in getting into the profession?
First, I would say if you really do think this is something you want to do, go for it. This industry is amazing. The people in it are incredibly welcoming, supportive, and that's at all levels, whether it's producers, our suppliers that do corks, glass, what have you, the writers that do it, our consumers. It is just an amazing industry to be in. So if you think it's what you want to do, go for it. It's worth the effort. It's worth the hours that it's going to take to get there. But I would also say, and I didn't know to do this when I started, but I realized this is what I did, and I think it helped me. Stop looking at the glass ceiling. Stop acknowledging that it's there. Stop acknowledging that there's a brick wall facing you. Uh, Ignore all of those things. They're not there. They're only obstacles if you acknowledge them.
Mm,
Just be the badass that you are
mhm,
and go for it. And in those glass ceilings, those brick walls, they won't exist
mm.
anymore as long as you focus on the end game.
Okay, it's amazing. And speaking of that in game, we talked about the core, Old Dominic. Tell people, how do you describe the core expression for the brand? What is that sensory experience that just want to, when you say that, people are gonna, after they watch this, they're gonna run out and want to grab a bottle.
Yeah, so our straight Tennessee whiskey, it is 85 proof, so it's a little lower on the proof side. I know we've got a lot of proof hounds out there right now, but I think we have a very flavorful, very amazing mouthfeel for our product. We do a number 4 char, so tons of vanilla, toffee, caramel, those really sweet barrel notes that you expect come through, but also with 75% corn, there is a nice, not overpowering corn sweetness that can come through. We do occasionally end up with a nice smokiness because of that number 4 char, but it's not in your face. We don't over oak. So if you're not into oak, don't worry about it. It's not going to be there. But overall, it's just going to be a very approachable, very enjoyable sipping whiskey. It's good for every day. You can sip it on the ice or make some mean old fashioned.
Awesome. And I know you guys are also into experimenting, and everyone loves experimental whiskeys, etc. So tell us a little about Old Dominic's The Lab, and what you guys have come up with, or are working on, for the future.
Yeah, so our R&D line super fun. It's distillery only, so you have to come to Memphis to experience it. But it started off with our gins, and we've done a couple of barrel rested gins. We've done some flavored vodkas in it. But really, what people get excited about is our beer barrel finished whiskeys that are in this line. We are fortunate enough to have a brewery in Memphis that does some crazy beers that they put in our barrels, and we take the barrels back. And this year, we've decided to up it. We've always done 3 to 4 beer barrels each year. This year, we've done 6, 4 of which are ready. I'm just waiting on labels. The good old fan favorite, all the cookies, is absolutely coming back. For those who don't know what it is, Meddlesome makes an oatmeal raisin cookie ale. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It is oatmeal raisin cookie in beer form. And they age it in our barrel for about a year. And then we take that barrel back and we put bourbon back in it. And at the end of it, we end up with an oatmeal raisin cookie bourbon. And you get the raisin, you get a little bit of oat, you get some vanilla, but you still get bourbon. And it is absolutely amazing. And then we have 3 others that we did this year that are brand new. We've never done them before. Some of them are kind of funky, super fun because Meddlesome played with some wood finishing. But ultimately, it's just a chance for us to partner with local businesses, but also put out some stuff that maybe would be cost prohibitive on a large scale, but we can absolutely do on this small scale, and just have fun with the flavors.
Awesome, great. And lastly, we're gonna wrap this up because we're running a little bit long. I want to make sure I'm sure you got other things to do. Great whiskey to make, and it's weekend. We're recording this on a Friday. I typically don't try to say the day. I just screwed up. It's fine. But we talked a lot about Memphis. I have not been. I'm excited to get down there soon, I hope. So what I always want to end is fun questions, something to make throw our guests off in a fun, positive way. Talked a lot about Memphis. So you've talked about obviously the music scene and the food scene. So if I said, all right, Alex, I'm coming to Memphis. I need one pick one place to do music, someone to see, band and or venue, and then one restaurant that I have to try. What do
So
you?
venue, it's not a venue that has music all the time, but I think the Levitt Shell in Overton Park is absolutely amazing. It has wonderful history. You'll have to look it up, but Elvis has some history there, as do others. They have some of their first concerts there. They do a free concert series in the summertime. It's outdoor venue. Shell is amazing. And then food, I have to say you have to go to Gus's Fried Chicken. It is not hot chicken like people know it. It's not what Nashville does, but there is definitely a spice to it in the batter, and it is some of the best fried chicken. And this is someone from Kentucky. It is some of the best fried chicken you will ever have, and it is right across the street from the distillery. So you can grab your chicken, bring it across, and eat it at a bar.
Alex, thank you so much for doing this. I guess lastly, just tell people where they can learn more about Old Dominick and more about you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Check out Old Dominick's website. It's going to be olddominick.com. Remember the K at the end. Not everyone does. You can also follow us on socials, Old Dominick. And then you can also follow me on Instagram at Memphis Distiller.
The one and only, the original, the OG Memphis
The
Distiller.
OG.
Thank you. Well, Alex, thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure talking to you. Look forward to, like I said, coming down to Memphis and trying some of those distillery releases and some chicken and checking out some music. So cheers.
Cheers.